Every government in history that has ever frozen bank accounts, devalued a currency, or declared a financial emergency has done one thing first. It has told its citizens that everything is fine. In 1933, Franklin Roosevelt signed an executive order requiring Americans to surrender their gold to the Federal Reserve. In 2013, Cyprus woke up one morning to find that 47% of every bank deposit over 100,000 euros had simply vanished, legally, overnight, with no warning. In 2022, Canada froze the bank accounts of peaceful protesters without a court order. These weren't accidents. They weren't glitches. They were features, built into the architecture of every modern financial system on Earth. And the uncomfortable question nobody asks is this: if your money is in a bank, whose money is it really? Because legally, the moment you deposit cash, you become an unsecured creditor to that institution. You don't own the money anymore. You own a promise. So today, we're going to talk about something governments don't teach in schools and banks don't put in brochures: the 5 categories of assets that sit structurally outside the reach of state seizure during a financial collapse, and why the wealthiest, most financially sophisticated people on the planet have quietly been moving into them for decades. The first is physical gold and silver held outside the banking system. Not gold ETFs, not gold certificates, not allocated accounts at a bullion bank. Physical metal, in your hand, stored privately. Here's why this matters. When Cyprus seized deposits, gold sitting in a private safe was untouched. When India demonetized its currency overnight in 2016, wiping out 86% of cash in circulation, physical gold held by families was completely unaffected. Gold has no counterparty risk, which is a technical way of saying it doesn't depend on anyone else's promise to be worth something. Central banks understand this better than anyone. In the last decade, central banks globally have been net buyers of gold at the fastest pace since the 1960s. They're not buying it because it pays a dividend. They're buying it because it is the only asset that is no one else's liability. The second category is land and hard real estate, specifically property held outright with no mortgage in jurisdictions with strong rule of law. Governments can tax land, they can regulate it, but outright seizure of private real estate in a stable democracy is politically and legally catastrophic. It almost never happens cleanly. This is why ultra-high net worth individuals don't just buy property, they buy property across multiple jurisdictions. A Swiss chalet, a New Zealand farm, a Portuguese estate. Geographic diversification of hard assets is not paranoia. It is the oldest risk management strategy in human civilization. The third asset class is foreign currency held in stable, non-correlated economies. When the Argentine peso collapsed, and it has done so 5 times in 40 years, citizens who held US dollars survived relatively intact. When the Turkish lira lost 80% of its value between 2018 and 2023, the people who had converted savings into euros or dollars years earlier lost almost nothing in real terms. The pattern is consistent across every currency crisis in modern history. The people who get destroyed are the ones who trusted the local system. The people who survive are the ones who quietly internationalized their savings before the crisis arrived, not during it, because by then it is always too late. The fourth category is equity in private businesses, specifically small productive businesses that generate real cash flows from real goods and services. During the Weimar hyperinflation of the 1920s, Germans who owned bakeries, farms, and workshops survived, while those who held savings accounts were wiped out entirely. A business that sells bread, fixes machines, or provides essential services will continue generating value even when the currency it operates in is collapsing, because it is attached to the real economy, not the financial one. This is not an asset class that sounds glamorous. That is precisely why it works. The fifth is the most contested and the most modern. Bitcoin and select hard digital assets held in self-custody, meaning in a hardware wallet that you physically control, with private keys that exist nowhere in the banking system. This is not an argument about price. It is an argument about architecture. Every other asset on this list can theoretically be identified, tracked, and targeted if a government becomes sufficiently determined. Bitcoin held in cold storage under the right circumstances cannot be seized without the holder's cooperation. El Salvador, the IMF, and the European Central Bank have all now been forced to formally acknowledge Bitcoin's existence in their financial frameworks, not because they want to, but because enough capital has moved there that they cannot ignore it. Now here is the part that most finance content skips over. None of these assets are a silver bullet. Governments are adaptive. After Roosevelt seized gold in 1933, he changed the rules again in 1934 and devalued the dollar by 40% anyway. Jurisdictions can close. Tax laws can shift. Even hard assets can be taxed into effective uselessness over time. The real protection is not any single asset. It is structural diversification across multiple asset classes, multiple jurisdictions, and multiple systems simultaneously. The wealthiest families in Europe, the old money that survived 2 world wars, 2 currency collapses, and multiple regime changes, hold diversified hard assets, foreign real estate, private businesses, and foreign currency as a matter of generational habit, not as a hedge against catastrophe, but as the baseline assumption that no single system lasts forever. The average person puts 100% of their net worth into one currency, in one country, inside one banking system, and calls it saving. And here is the final thought to sit with. The countries most likely to restrict capital, freeze assets, or impose financial controls are almost never the ones that openly signal they're going to do it. They are the ones that, right up until the moment they act, tell their citizens everything is perfectly fine. So the only real question worth asking is not whether any of this could happen where you live. The question is whether you would know in time to do anything about it, and whether the answer to that question should change what you do today.